Hello everyone, welcome. Thanks for liking my videos and subscribing to my channel. I do appreciate it. Today's video, we're going to talk about banking in the Philippines. More specifically, which bank should you use if you choose to deposit money in one of the many different Philippine banks? Right there, you have a Union Bank located across the street from One Pacific Residences. And one might ask, is that a good bank to deposit your money in? And we are going to talk about the different banks in the Philippines, what banks have good credit quality and low default qualities, and which banks have high default probabilities. Let's take a walk down Newtown Boulevard and talk about the Philippine banking system. The first thing I wanted to mention is that the Philippines banks do insure your deposits up to 1 million pesos. I believe they call it the MDIC, which is similar to the FDIC in America, Federal Deposit Insurance. So if the bank would fail, essentially the government would guarantee your first 1 million peso deposits. So that's good news. Let's talk about the different banks in the Philippines. They have several different banks. And what I'm going to talk about is the credit worthiness of the banks, which essentially is the default probability. And those in the financial sector know that you determine the financial strength based on the probability of default. In other words, what is the chances the bank will essentially go bankrupt and default and not be able to pay their depositors. And there are several rating agencies around the world that look at institutions and companies of all sizes and shapes, and they rate the credit quality. And most of these companies will issue a bond. They will essentially borrow money to create their financial institution. And there's 3 rating agencies: Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch. And they rate these institutions based on, they look at their financial statements, they look at the market they're in, they look at their financial solvency, and they come up with what they call a default probability. What is the chances that bank will not be able to pay their bills because they have an inadequate balance sheet, etc.? Let's talk about that. So I want to talk about the credit quality of the banks in the Philippines, which corresponds to a default credit rating, which essentially means what is the probability that these banks will default and not pay their deposits. And I'm going to use one of the 3 major rating agencies. It's called Fitch. There is a Moody's and a Standard & Poor's rating agency as well. And the rating agencies they use similar grading systems. The companies rate bonds on a scale from top quality investment grade, which is AAA, to BBB. They also rate low quality or speculative or junk bonds, and those are rated BB to D, which reflects the credit worthiness of the sovereign corporate issuers. Bonds are rated before issuance, which influence the returns they offer investors. Higher risk requires higher returns. Changes in events during a bond's term might lead agencies to adjust its rating. And I'm using Fitch to describe the credit quality of the banks here in the Philippines. Fitch is one of the top 3 credit rating agencies globally, alongside Moody's and Standard & Poor's. Fitch Ratings evaluates debt instruments based on the financial stability of the issuing entity. And that's what we're going to talk about, the financial stability of these banks. And the first bank I brought to you was the Union Bank, located across the street from One Pacific Residences. And Fitch rates the credit quality of the Union Bank at BBB-. It is considered to be investment grade. It is considered to be a low probability of default and a high and good credit risk. The next bank I want to talk about is BDO Bank. A lot of people have heard about BDO Bank here in the Philippines. BDO Bank has a Fitch rating of BBB-. It's the same credit rating as Union Bank. It is investment grade. It is low probability of default. You can feel reasonably assured if you put your money in BDO that you will be able to get it back out someday. And all the banks in the Philippines do have insurance on the deposits. 1 million pesos is the insurance amount. It acts very similar to the FDIC in America, Federal Deposit Insurance Company. In the event the bank would fail, the Philippines government would reimburse you for up to 1 million pesos that you would have deposited in the bank. So I wanted to let you know that fact. And I will give you the credit rating of the Philippines. Each country in the world has its own credit rating by Fitch, Standard & Poor's, and Moody's. So the FDIC, or the deposit insurance, is as only good as the credit quality of the country. And I will bring you the credit quality of the Philippines a little bit later in this video. So the next bank I want to talk about is RCBC Bank. This bank is the only bank on my list that is below investment grade. They have a higher probability of default. They have been downgraded over time. And I would think twice about putting my money in RCBC Bank, because it is the only bank on my list that is below investment grade. It's listed as BB+. The next bank I want to talk about is the Bank of the Philippine Islands. Let's talk about that. Bank of the Philippine Islands has a Fitch credit rating of BB-. It is the same rating as BDO and Union Bank. But the Bank of the Philippine Islands, their credit rating was recently upgraded from BB+. That was in March of 2025. So they were below investment grade, and then they recently were upgraded to investment grade. So keep that in mind. The next bank I want to talk about is China Bank. They do have China Bank here in the Philippines. And this bank has the highest credit quality of all the banks I'm going to talk about today. They have an A rating by Fitch. And keep in mind, Fitch is rating the default probability on the bonds that are issued by the company. Essentially, these companies will take out a loan, which is in the form of a bond, and they are required to pay that loan back. And Fitch and Moody's and Standard & Poor's essentially are looking at the financial credit quality, the financial statements of these banks And they are determining what is the probability that bank is going to be able to repay that loan, that bond. And then they issue the rating, and there's default probabilities that coincide with each rating. Hi, good afternoon, how are you? So the China Bank is the only A-rated bank on the list. And I used to work for companies in America, and we had policies in place that we would only work with banks that had A ratings. We would not work with any bank that had a triple B rating or lower, or even a triple B plus rating or lower. We had treasury management policies in our companies that required we bank with institutions that had a minimum of an A rating. Just to give you some perspective, friends. So let's talk about some other banks. The Metropolitan Bank in the Philippines, some people might be using. The Metropolitan Bank has a triple B minus rating. That is investment grade, that is low probability of default. It has the same rating as the Union Bank, the BDO Bank, the Bank of the Philippines. So all those banks have the triple B minus rating. It is investment grade, low probability of default. You should be able to sleep at night if you have your money deposited in the Metropolitan Bank. The final bank I want to talk about here in the Philippines is called the Security Bank. This bank is not rated by Fitch, but it is rated by Moody's, one of the three major rating agencies. And it is rated Baa2. Their rating system is slightly different. They have different numbers and letters. But Baa2, negative. It is considered investment grade, low probability of default, but it does have a negative outlook, meaning that Moody's does expect to lower the rating of this bank sometime in the future. So those are the banks I looked at here in the Philippines. Now I wanted to give you what the Fitch rating is for the country of the Philippines. Because if the Philippines is guaranteeing your deposit in these banks, your deposit is only as safe as the credit quality of the country that is insuring your deposit, which is the Philippines. The Philippines has a triple B rating according to Fitch. So the country rating is a little bit stronger and a little bit better than the Union Bank, the BDO Bank, the Bank of the Philippines, and the Metropolitan Bank. But it's actually a lower credit quality than the China Bank. So you can be reasonably assured that the Philippines triple B rating is investment grade. It is low probability of default. And you should feel fairly comfortable depositing at least 1 million pesos in any one of these financial institutions here that I mentioned on the video today that has at least an investment grade quality. That is your video for today. I hope I cleared up some of the banking concerns here in the Philippines. Overall, most of the banks are investment grade. You should have no issues with putting your money in any of these banks. There's really only one bank that was below investment grade. I would ask you to think twice about using that bank, but all the other banks have pretty good financial credit quality. There's only one A-rated bank in the Philippines, and that is the China Bank. And it is up to you which bank you choose, because they do have the 1 million peso deposit insurance, and that's backed up by the Philippines, which has a BBB investment grade credit rating. I hope that clears things up. Let me know in the comments below if you have more questions. Thanks for liking, thanks for sharing. Feel free to share the video with anybody who feels interested in this content. Have a great day, stay safe, and good luck.